welcome everyone to Crypticon 2016. My name is Tony Kay. I write about film for City Art's website and magazine, and I am honored to be here for this particular panel. Quick introduction for our guest of honor here. Make no mistake, Robert Lasardo is a badass. It's a mantle he's worn with distinction during a career that spanned almost 4 decades. His charisma has enriched more genre films than you can shake a stick, a fist, or a Glock at. And whenever Lasardo turns up on screen, you know shit is going to go down, and then it'll be riveting to watch. More importantly, Lasardo can deliver myriad dimensions of tough guys, from implacable villains to sympathetic anti-heroes, often with a spiritual bent. And when he's given a meaty role where he gets to combine that distinctive sense of menace with nobility in equal measure, as he did on NipTuck as Escobar Gallardo, there is nobody better. So it turns out this guy has earned his tough guy credentials, and between his childhood in New York, a stint in the US Navy, and 30+ years in the acting trenches, he's damn sure got a story or two to tell. So it's an honor to have him here. Please welcome Mr. Robert Lasardo. Thank you. You're very welcome. It's my chance to be all fanboy before I go all serious journalist here.
Might need this. Thank you for such an eloquent and detailed and insightful introduction. I was kind of beside myself and looking at my wife. I think she was a bit amazed at the introduction. Thank you for such a comprehensive
You're welcome.
Research.
We haven't even gotten into the questions.
So, wow.
So how are you?
It's great. Well, it's better than I know you.
Which I'm sure you did a lot too.
Yeah, which is great.
So have your career is so massive, you have so much on your resume. Have you ever been to the Northwest Corridor? Is this the first time for you, or have you shot out here? With
I was shot out here when I was in the military. I did 4 years in the US Navy, and I had a brief stint in, is it Bremerton?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Bremerton, aboard of an auxiliary destroyer in transit. So that was my, and I got some tattoo work. Of course.
Wow, of course. Where have you not been?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm sure. So I wanted to actually ask you, first of all, about your early days, because you grew up in New York, and kind of were, Coney Island was sort of your stomping grounds.
Oh.
And it sounds like a heck of a great kind of avenue / fodder for inspiration and creativity. What was your early childhood like out there?
Do you want the R-rated version or the PG-13?
I don't know. It's a horror. Yeah, of course.
My childhood, but I'm not special. My childhood was hell. But the good news is that not too far away, on the F train, the elevated trains back in the day in Brooklyn, I could sneak onto the train. I think I was riding the trains when I was in third grade. I'd figured out a way to, because I was so small, to sneak underneath the metal grate and get on the trains and make my way to what was left of Steeplechase Park, known as Coney Island. And back in the 70s, when I was visiting it as a child, there was still some semblance of the original theme park. It was beautiful. It was amazing. The Wonder Wheel, the famous Cyclone, another roller coaster called the Tornado, the Thunderbolt. I mean, I knew all of them. Like they might as well been furniture in my living room. I took survey of everything. I spent so much time there because, I didn't go to school much. What's the point? When you get thrown out all the time, nothing really makes any sense. So, yeah, Coney Island was the closest thing to heaven on earth.
For a kid, I would imagine it would be. So were you kind of interested in acting right from the get-go? Was it something that sort of was inspiring you during childhood, or when did the bug bite you?
No. I think also, like a lot of young men and women who wanted to find healthy forms of escape, I found myself in movie theaters. I was often left at movie theaters. You don't want to babysit your kid, just leave him at the movie theater, and let him find his way home. But anyway, I remember watching Vincent Price, Dr. Fox. I don't know if anybody remembers the series Dr. Fox. I remember seeing this on the big screen as a kid. I watched a variety of films that had become, classics, and conventions like this being tribute to them. So as an adult to look at this, and remember as a child, I witnessed this stuff firsthand in the theaters. It's pretty amazing. So I think, to answer your question, no, I was just inspired by what I saw on the screen and the ability to transport myself, like a lot of us do, into the mythos, into fantasy. And that became my reality. It was a way to find peace in the turbulence around me. And I didn't realize at that time that I was tapping into imagination, my own, in relationship to what I was observing. That would come later, when I would apply myself, I guess, theater workshops, drama class. I would utilize the reference material that I gathered watching these films. Obviously, in the moment, you don't realize how this stuff is affecting your psyche, your emotional life, and all this stuff. But later on, I've been able to utilize it and grab hold of it when necessary. It wasn't until later on that a teacher in junior high school was concerned about me because I was getting into some trouble and I wasn't showing up at school very often. Recommended a way to work through some of the conflict that a lot of young men experience growing up in the city and not knowing where to place that aggression. A lot of times you place it the wrong way. So I was going down that road for a while, and luckily the teacher noticed that, and she just recommended a drama class. And so before I knew it, I was on stage working through a lot of the issues I had with the help of a teacher and great classic works or contemporary plays, studying them, reading them, and revisiting a relationship through imagination, not necessarily just film, but the written word, and then discovering the power of the imagination, lifting it off the page, and then bringing it to life on stage. I wasn't aware of what I was doing. I just was applying myself because it seemed to make sense. I had fun doing it. And what was interesting was to observe the response from my classmates when they saw me perform. I was like, whoa, I didn't really quite get it, but I knew that they were affected by it. And the teachers around me, other people around me, supported it. It finally felt good to feel like I had value as a human being, because up until that point, I didn't even feel like I deserved to be on the planet.
Well, it's that sort of sense of definition, a lot of actors get it from their craft when you discover it. And I was just incredibly impressed that you were that you had been accepted at the School for the High School for Performing Arts, which is the school that was immortalized in the movie Fame. That's like some seriously prestigious stuff. How'd you get there, and what was that experience like?
Well, the teacher that I mentioned early in my story knew about the High School for Performing Arts, and she suggested that I audition for that school. And of course, when I first heard of that, I was petrified, because the idea of competing didn't make any sense to me. I enjoyed taking the class. I enjoyed the comfort of that school. But then when I found out, they look at 2,000 applicants, 2,000 applicants per year, and then they accept 90. I remember feeling like, I don't know if I want to do this. I realized early on that maybe I wasn't the competitive type, because at that stage you didn't feel like, oh yeah, great, I'll run toward this. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. So we talked about that. And despite my anxiety, my fear, and insecurity, she stayed on me. So to make a long story short, I prepared 2 contemporary monologues, and I auditioned for the High School Performing Arts, and I didn't get in. And that kind of sucked. So I thought, okay, maybe this whole thing's a fluke. Maybe these people are just being nice to me because they feel sorry for me, so screw it, right? But she said, no, you can audition again. You have one more chance. Next year you can audition, you can come in as a sophomore. So I got busy working on another pair of monologues. And this time, for whatever reason I don't understand, maybe it was the material I chose. I think one of the monologues had something to do with a young man, I think it was the Glass Menagerie. The young man talking about his mother, and his mother being away from home a lot and being abandoned, and having to deal with the emotional, psychological struggles that come with that type of situation. And I think when I read that monologue, performed it in front of the panel of judges for the audition, I forgot that they were even there after. I didn't feel like I was even auditioning. I felt like I felt when I was watching movies. I didn't exist anymore. I transported myself into the film. And I'd also done the same thing. I'd conjured disposition without knowing it, despite the nervous prior to the auditions. And when I was there, I no longer was Robert. I was just simply immersed in the disposition, the situation, what I was trying to communicate to the person standing in front of me about my mother. And that made it real, and they just disappeared. And afterwards, there was silence in the room. And I had a feeling that I made some impact based on the expression. And then I found out not too long after that I was accepted.
Right on. So at this point, obviously now that you're an actor and that you are ardently studying the craft, at this point were you looking at other, like be it film or stage actors and kind of, gathering a little bit of inspiration and experience, kind of experiencing what they were doing and sort of drawing from it a little? I find that the reason I ask that is because you strike me as just like a kind of classic character actor in the mold of guys who appeared in movies by like Sam Peckinpah and Don Siegel. Just guys who could.
Dan Duryea?
Yes, thank you. You're like a badass Dan Duryea. Totally. So were there guys like that who were inspirations to you once you started acting?
Yes. Because, I was so, had such an affection for film, I found myself also watching a lot of the classics, the black and white films. A lot of the actors that you mentioned appeared in these films, great character actors, great leading men. And there's something very innocent about these films, even though some of the subject matter was, turbulent or, whatever it was, conflict or these tragic love affairs or, whatever the subject matter was. It was presented with such a beautiful score, musical score. If you look at To Have and Have Not,
Oh yeah.
with Humphrey Bogart and
Lauren Bacall.
Yeah, there's some of the subject during the fall of France, during World War II. A lot of heavy stuff is going on, but they present it to you in such a way that's very romantic. And so, yeah, it's terrible, but it's beautiful at the same time. So I was romanced by a lot of these classic films and fell in love with a lot of the actors and actresses of those times. And I felt like I belonged in that.
Or too late.
That timeline. I'm like, what am I doing? I belong in that world, So, I lived vicariously through these films, James Cagney, Edward G. Robertson, Humphrey Bogart. I've been on a list of people, I don't want to leave anybody out. Burt Lancaster, oh my God. I saw this film, Crisscross, with him and Yvonne DiCarlo.
Oh my God.
She was astonishing. She was beautiful, incredible.
People think of her as Lily Munster.
I know,
She
yeah.
was amazing.
Remember the Munsters?
Like, fatale in that movie.
Yeah. So, long story short, yes, classic films was my case study in terms of the craft. Yeah, of course, the teachers at school were very adamant about us studying the great playwrights, Tennessee Williams, Shakespeare. So yeah, we had a regimen every day of having to get involved with that, and I thought that was fascinating too. Golden Boy, great play, also performed by William Holden on stage and also in the film, Golden Boy. So William Holden was another inspiration for me, a great actor, had an incredible span career, amazing. And so these were like my friends. And I think, like I said earlier, without knowing, I borrowed a lot of the techniques and the style by just simply observing the film through entertainment. And then when it came time to perform, I didn't realize that these things were attached to me, the mannerisms or a particular style, a pause. Because back then, it wasn't like the films, they took their time. They developed the characters, they took their time with the story. There were these pauses that worked, and people had the ability, because they read more than to observe, and they weren't bored by this. It was curious to see how things would unfold, and follow the story and see where it went. It wasn't this instant gratification. So my style came from observing that. It got me into trouble sometimes because they're like, Robert, faster, we're getting quicker. Come on, Robert, we need to get through this take today, not tomorrow. So sometimes it can hinder you when you're living in a world of CGI, quick takes, quick result. We don't really care about character development. Just give us an impression. Blow up, go crazy, this kind of thing. So, and I realized that has its place too, but it was hard for me to shake, or what I felt was to betray the craft of what I was trained. I was trained by teachers who their religion was Stanislavski, the method. And so, it was difficult for me to let go of certain fundamentals and reintroduce myself to the craft in a way that worked within the industry and what they needed. So they wanted they wanted manifestation, they wanted disposition instantaneous. They didn't care about your process now. They want the result now. And so that's what I found. I had to discover new techniques and visit other types of films or just observe other actors who were amazing in their ability to, hi, 1 minute, and then flip a switch and go someplace else in a second. And I thought, well, that's impressive.
So there was a period of time where you were in the service, of course, and then after a spell in the service, you went back into acting. What was kind of going on in that span for you?
In the military, yeah, just identity crisis. I realized, I did 2 years in the Aleutian Islands. I don't know if anybody knows where that is. It's like below Siberia. It's about 900 miles below Siberia. It's the Aleutian chain. Back in the day, the thinking was if the Russians were going to invade, they would come through the Aleutians, right? So they have all these little islands, these listening posts with marine compounds, the Navy, SEALs, you can see. And I was there with the dogs. I was a dog handler. I was a cop. I wore a badge. But yeah, I had a gun, a badge, all that stuff. I was a good guy. Yeah, right. Anyway, so it was kind of, when I was in performing arts, some of my classmates went on to have some really successful careers. So it was bizarre for me to observe people like Esai Morales, Helen Slater.
Yeah.
3 years into the Navy, I left the Aleutians, I requested overseas duty, so they put me on board a ship. I did Westpac, went overseas, went South Pacific, crossed the equator, all that stuff. Saw the world, it was amazing. Got tattoos from all over the world, it was beautiful. I was in this floating prison, but occasionally they'd let us go out and go crazy, so I went full crazy. Got tattooed, got drunk, did all the stuff a sailor's supposed to do. But then after a while, I just felt like, okay, where do I go now? I needed to leave Brooklyn. I needed to get some sense of self. I needed, like a lot of men, to find some meaning, some greater meaning in my life other than what I was looking at home, which was, death or prison or God knows what else. So I made it overseas, okay? Then I came back to the States, and the entire time that I was in the military, I kept in touch with one of my teachers at Performing Arts, Anthony Abeson, who was my true north. And he was adamant about creativity. He always, Rob, please do not, I know you're doing all this, and you need to figure some stuff out, but don't forget the other half of yourself, the creative self. Please don't lose touch with that. And so I would talk to him. We had conversations. I would call him from overseas. I'd call him from Australia. I mean, ridiculous. All my pay went to my phone bills. But while I was going through that experience, there was another side of me, hungering, starving for the experience that I remembered at Performing Arts. I remember having dreams about the school, revisiting the school while I was in the military. The difficulty is that, or was, when you're in the military, you can't just say, okay, I've had enough. I want to go back home.
Oh yeah.
I had 4 years I had to do. So it turned into like, okay, I'm doing a sentence. Am I ever going to get out? So then the fear became, well, am I ever going to get out? Because I saw guys getting into trouble, dishonorable discharge, bad conduct discharge, all kinds of bizarre things happening in some of the places I went. And I thought, if I could just get out of here, I'll go back to New York. I'll revisit with my acting teacher I've been communicating with, and I'll try to see if I can finally have the courage to embrace this creative side of myself that I ran clear across the world to escape, because I didn't want to be an actor. I didn't even believe I was an actor. Even when I graduated from Performing Arts, the natural progression was that you go to Juilliard, or you get an agent, you start auditioning. I didn't want to do any of that. I was like, no, I'm a street guy. And a lot of my friends that I knew were catching cases, getting locked up, or dealing with stuff, and that was what I knew. And to me, the gravity shift, or the gap from performing arts to career was about the size of the Grand Canyon. How am I going to, no, let me just stick with what I know. So the old tendencies kicked in, and the old tendencies is what, I realized was going to destroy me. So the Navy made sense, but then eventually the Navy did make sense. And then when I was on board ship once, and we were watching a program, and I saw Esai Morales, and I saw Helen Slater, and these are my classmates. And I'm hearing the voice of my teacher, you can do this. I wasn't lying to me. Maybe there's something to this. Maybe I need to explore this. How old am I? How much time do I have left? So, needless to say, when I got discharged, I went back to New York. I got my button gear. I started studying privately with Anthony Abeson at his studio. He had a friend at the time who was the coordinator at the actor's studio long before it became a television show. And so
But even back then, it was hugely prestigious.
yes, and it was also very cryptic. Like you could just walk in there. You know, and I thought it was kind of cool that here I am, like a few months out of the military. I'm cleaning sweeping the steps of the actor's studio. I went in. What their deal was is, you do work inside the studio. You build their sets. You clean the bathrooms. You paint the walls. You do all the apprentice work, all the grunt work, and they give you these little credits. And with these credits, you're allowed to sit down in an audience similar to this, and you get to watch people like Shelley Williams, Christopher Walken, Robert, Al Pacino, Lee Grant, Ellen Burstyn. And I would listen to these people. I couldn't believe who I was. It was surreal. I was just in the Navy, and now I'm sitting here, and Robert De Niro just walked past me. Shelley Williams over there. And then I was more than happy to clean the toilets. I was more than happy to build the sets. Yeah, what else do I have to do? To just hang out? Because that was I guess that was my religion at that time. Like, these are the demigods. I made it to diplomacy. A few years ago, I was in the Aleutian Islands, It's snow up to here, now I'm at the Anchor Studio. So that's when I realized that maybe all things are possible, just believe, with a reason. And so then I started to take the craft serious, then I started auditioning, I even started out at the conservatory.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so to get to the point, yeah, I started taking the craft, the work, and my ability, I gave my ability more respect based on what I was told, and I tried to own that.
So at what point were you starting out doing stage work, and at what point, how long did it take you to kind of get into motion pictures?
Okay, stage work came about in performing arts. We did at the end of the semester, the final test was the Spring Drama Festival, and so we performed Three Penny Opera.
Oh, right on.
It was terrific, yeah. So that was, and prior to that, we did something that was akin also to Humphrey Bogart, Petrified Forest.
Oh, wow.
Remember that film?
Yeah.
Eddie Davis? Yeah.
Leslie Howard.
Yes, tremendous. I owned the film. But so I did that. So I had some experience with stage, going through rites of passage and performing arts. And so then after that, once I got back into a situation of study, there wasn't much opportunity, at least at that time, for stage. I had auditioned for some plays, but unfortunately, and I was considered for some plays, but the feedback always was, through management, Rob, they thought you were great. In fact, they thought of all the people that auditioned, your talent was most visible, but here's the issue. There's a couple of scenes in the play where you have to have your shirt off. And so I was losing jobs because of the ink in the tattoo. So I did try, at first in New York, to get involved in theatrical productions, but they wouldn't hire me. So then we moved into auditions for television and movies. And my first break came with Warner Brothers Studio. I auditioned for a film. I auditioned for a film. I didn't know at the time who was starring in it, but I found out that Richard Pryor would be the star of a comedy called Moving. Yeah, and I went in for the audition, and at this point, I didn't like. I don't think any actor in their right mind enjoys auditioning. If anybody tells you they enjoy auditioning, they're crazy. I don't know why.
Or masochist.
Yeah, thank you. So I told management, I told Anthony Apes, my teacher, I said, you know what, man, I don't know if this is for me. Like, I'm shaking before I go into audition. It's like dying. You feel like you're going to physically die, fall on the floor, just have a seizure. I said, is this what I'm going to have to go through? Because if this is what I have to go through
every time,
I'm not going to make it, man. I'll go back to the Navy, man. Send me to the Aleutian Islands. It's better than this. So I was petrified, but I had to get over that. I had to face my fear and just what's that saying? Like the only difference between the coward and the hero is that they both feel the fear. Just the difference is, I guess, the hero keeps moving. Right? You face it. So I did my best to go into these rooms and face the firing squad of judgment while they critique everything you're doing. And shaking, but for whatever reason I didn't understand at the time, but something came through during this audition, because prior to that, the auditions were a train wreck. I was like, forget it, it's done. So I auditioned for Moving, I got a call back. I'm like, wow, I got a call back, and I really got nervous. I'm like, shit, how am I going to do that again? Because I don't even know what I did to get these people to like me in the first place, man. So and then the second audition, the producers and the director, the writers all flew in from Los Angeles to New York, so I had really standing in front of the brass. I'm like, oh, great. So I auditioned for them, took out my top hat and my cane and did my little, hello, my darling, did my best. I waited, like we all do. I waited. I thought, forget it. And I called management, and I didn't get anybody who would answer the phone. I left a message, and I got a message back. Back in the day when you had like actual answer machines, right? It said, yeah, we'll call you back. It didn't sound like there wasn't any optimism in the message of he's trying to let me down easy, right? So I missed the call. I called back again because after a while, just like I need to know what the hell happened. He said to me, "Guess who's going to Hollywood?" I don't know who. You. Really? Yeah. And so I got a contract with Warner Brothers for 3 months to play a supporting role as one of the movers, film starring Richard Pryor, directed by Alan Metter, who was the, at that time his claim to fame was a movie called Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that director was directing this. Dana Carvey was one of the leads. Randy Quaid, Gordon Jump, just a list of people that were petrifying to look at. I was like, wow, okay, not too much pressure. I'm going to do a table read with these guys. So that was my first big break. I got a studio contract, 3 months, and it was about, I don't know, let's see. I was out of the Navy maybe a year and a couple of months.
Wow.
I saw Aleutian Islands, South Pacific, back to New York, Actors Studio, Stella Adler Conservatory, Hollywood.
Wow, that's a turnaround that most actors actually would really envy.
Tattoos, too. Don't forget those. They came with me everywhere I went.
And actually, that's something that I did want to address, I guess, before we go through the rest of your career. Is obviously, ink and body art mean a lot to you. It's something more than just like a fashion statement. It's part of your personality. It's part of you as a human being. Could you kind of talk about that whole journey?
How much time?
One thing I did hear that I thought was really cool is you have, I don't know if you still have it, but you at one point had a Cyclops on your shoulder?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. This is a tribute to my favorite stop motion animator of all time, Ray Harryhausen. Anybody know that person?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure you're preaching solidly to the choir on that
Yeah,
one.
Ray Harryhausen, man. I fell in love with the Cyclops. I saw the film, The Seven Gorgeous Sinbad, at a school assembly when they were showing movies at one time. And they showed this film, and when I saw the Cyclops, something happened. Something clicked in my brain. I felt sorry for the creature. And I was like, oh, that sucks. He gets his eye poked out. Yeah,
And he's only got one.
Yeah,
Jesus.
that sucks. And he's got to fight this dragon. I was pissed. I got mad at Ray Harryhausen. I was like, why does the dragon have to win? He fights this dragon. The dragon bites him in the shoulder. And then the first Cyclops falls off a cliff. The second one fights the dragon. So anyway, needless to say, I got very involved in this movie, so much so that I tattooed, the perceived deity on my right arm here. So yeah, some of the tattoos I think are definitely celebratory in terms of various movies and mythologies and storytelling that have touched my spirit and my heart and I have an affection for. So yeah, the ink is definitely rooted in some of that. Some of the other ink, though, I think has a lot to do with the psychological and emotional turbulence that I experienced throughout my life. And it was probably the healthiest way for me to deal with those feelings. Yeah, it was a cathartic experience, and it was necessary. And so at the time when I was in therapy, I remember speaking to my doctor because I come up against all kinds of opposition in terms of judgment because of the ink in the industry. And actors would say, well, I got a lot of crap from people. And even management was like, Robert, if you didn't have all these tattoos, man, you'd probably be up on a higher tier in the industry. And like, what do you want me to do? Like, kill myself? Man? So I told the therapist this, and he said to me, next time one of these clowns says something without considering your past, who you are as a human being, you might want to tell them if you didn't have the tattoos, you might not be alive right now. So, tattoos, I think, not to make it dark and moody and gloomy. I think they're beautiful. I love the fact that now it's so celebrated. My wife, she's got, she's twice her age. God bless me. Somebody bless me. But she's beautiful, and if anybody would have told me when I was in my 20s that young men and women, beautiful young men and women, would decorate themselves, communicate that expression in the way in modern society where people would embrace it and develop conventions around it and posters, I would never believe it. I was ready to check out at one point because I just felt like Quasimodo, man. You know, and I was on that thing spinning around like Ron Chaney, and they looked at me, and I'm like, okay, I guess this is what it's going to be for the rest of my life. And then one day I woke up, and it was cool and trendy. So I guess, yeah, my ink is pretty fucking cool, man. And it's trendy, but it's not, because like Dick, I was doing it like...
I was doing it before.
It was
cool.
illegal when I was in New York City. I got tattooed in some guy's house in Brooklyn. I was petrified again. Because I'm looking at all these cutthroats waiting in the room before me. And you're trying to man up, like, I'm not afraid. You know, I've never been tattooed before. And you don't know what it's going to feel like, or what's going to happen to you. And of course, everybody who didn't want me to get the tattoo was like, oh, I heard the ink. If the ink is poisonous and you're allergic, you can die right on the spot. Somebody told me this. They stick the needle and you have an allergic reaction, you fall right over, just like, you know, seafood, you know, it's allergic to I was just like convulsing, so I'm like, holy shit, what if I'm allergic to the ink? I'll be the one guy that like dies on the fucking chair. So I sat there and I did my best, I held my breath, I was just like, and he stuck the needle in, and I'm like, that's it? And I was like, okay. And then, you know, as usual, it's never what you imagine it to be there, so it's pretty cool after that.
So I want to jump around a little bit and ask you about some kind of more famous / notorious things that you've done. You were in Waterworld, the notorious Kevin Costner starring vehicle. What was that experience like? That's a notorious film shoot. So could you
I'm
give
going to
us
ask
a
you
scoop?
a question. Yeah, it was pretty notorious. Why? The question is why? Was it the budget at the time?
Yeah, well, I think it was a combination of the budget and also that it just sounded like it was an enormous logistic undertaking that was having a lot of problems, and that they were doing something that was inherently impractical, which is trying to do a huge amount of shooting on the water. So what was all that like?
The sets were sinking, yeah, basically.
Exactly.
The sets were sinking, and the budget was sinking, and escalating, and you know, people I'm sure at the studio were, you know, beside themselves, ready to kill Kevin Costner. But despite all the
Were you?
right. Despite all of that, I met Kevin Costner. He was very friendly. It was Kevin Reynolds.
Yeah.
I met him. They were very friendly, and I got to spend 10 days on the island of Kona in Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii. It was cool to be there now as a civilian, right? Filming a movie. So I got to spend 10 days on the island. There wasn't a whole lot of interaction for me in terms of the character in the movie, but what I thought was fascinating and a bit notorious was that they constructed a robot, because my sequence involved a crash, right? And one of the characters that were riding these jet skis were called smokers, I think that's referred to. And Kevin Costner's character was trying to get on board the ship where, you know, where I guess the bad guys or his infiltrate the enemy. And was it Dennis Hopper played the lead pirate on board the ship. And so one of the entry points, there was a guard, and I played this character, Smitty. And so they put me in a full body cast, and they reconstructed me like a $6 million man, and they painted tattoos all over this dummy, I guess. And they put a wig on it and everything, and say, Robert, look at yourself. And they stood this thing up, and I watched them destroy this dummy like about 12 times. They got the stunt guy who looked like Kevin Costner just crash into the wall. It's amazing. That's pretty cool. I'm getting paid for this. It's cool. I get to talk about it later. So that was my experience with Waterworld. I got to see a replicant of myself be killed, and I also got to hang out in Hawaii for 10 glorious days, and was treated very well. We should all be so lucky to have a film experience that involves, you know, filming in Hawaii or you know, kind of a remote location like that and get paid. So I have nothing bad to say about it.
Very cool. I wanted to also ask you, before I turn things over to the audience, which I think would probably be a pretty good thing to do in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to ask you in detail about Escobar and about NipTuck. Have you guys seen NipTuck? That's where, you know, you were always this wonderful actor on the periphery in movies and TV over the years, but that was the role that just really, I think, for me, and I'm sure everybody here who saw it, just blew us away and really put you in our consciousness. What was it like creating that character? Did it start out supposedly having that many years, legs on the show? Was it going to be a one-off? And what was it like creating that?
I think it was a collection. In terms of the creation of the character, there's a combination of elements. I think that Ryan Murphy's incredible writing and direction cannot be ignored. I'm not going to take full credit for that, because what I've noticed about films and great television shows that become iconic is that you have great performances, but if the writing team and the directors and if the vision isn't genius, or they don't know how to effectively transition that into entertainment that affects people the way that you described, it just doesn't work. So you need people to have vision and have the ability to communicate that in a way that stays with people for a very long time. So I was fortunate enough to, at that point, have a collection, a collage of various characters and psychodrama going on based on what I'd been asked to do prior to that, and then channel all that into Escobar and Lasardo and use the writing as a navigation through a different story. So it was aspects of the stuff prior, present, and I just also think just superb direction and writing of the show. Because when I was filming, I didn't think, oh wow, this is going to be tremendous. I didn't think it was going to be awful. It didn't feel like anything different. It just felt like another challenge as a creator to authenticate an experience based on what I read on the page. I read what's on the page, I read it again, I read it again, and I go deeper, and then I start to see things. I start to breathe, and I start to feel things. And I look at the scenery that's created around me, and I just go. They say action, and you just go there, right? So you're not thinking, oh wow, this is going to be terrific. You're not judging. You can't get, if you step outside of yourself and watch it, you break the spell, right? So you're completely involved. So I was very involved, as always, not knowing the impact that this show would have later on. I don't think, and they hired me. They hired me with the intention to keep me around for very long. I just thought it was going to be another, a bit episode type deal. And thank you, Robert, fantastic. And then someone came up to me in the street one day in Los Angeles, and somebody connected to FX and said, Robert, I'm one of the editors on the and explained the FX and NipTuck. It's wait till you see it. I'm like, okay. And I felt like there was a tsunami coming out. I couldn't see it, but it's coming. What's coming? You'll see. And then I didn't realize the impact of, I think finally someone knew how to take certain inherent qualities I had, times the fiction within the writing, integrate those two, shoot it in such a way, and also bring to life elements of humor within the character that I've been working with, make fun of it, the nefarious element that also present in all the characters, but then spin it a bit and add some intelligence to it. All the things I wasn't allowed to do prior were finally allowed to fully integrate. And I think that's why people were affected, because I don't think Escobar was a stupid guy. He was
Not
an
at all.
intelligent
Not at all.
character.
Ferociously intelligent.
Right, and I think that's what's different. With respect to the other writers and the other shows I've been on, I don't think I was allowed to take that ball, and I wasn't really given much yardage to run, where people can actually see the transformation occur in a way where we're used to seeing actors that we love transition, and wow, look at the character arc. Whoa. I just want to get ready to take off. Okay, thank you. And boom, that's it. Yeah. So I think it's a situation where I was allowed a lot more character development than ever before. And I also was with the right team. You have to be with the right people to know what they're doing.
Well, if anybody has some questions, feel free to jump in at this point. I have plenty of my own, but I don't want to hog the stage entirely. Does anybody have any questions at the moment? Yes, sir.
Outside of things we've talked about, what are some of your favorite works or things you've done?
Within films and movies?
Yeah, we'll go with film.
I worked on a film directed by Chris Fisher, starring Cuba Gooding Jr. and Clifton Collins, called Dirty. They dressed me up in a white suit, a kind of a similar character to Escobar, a little more, I guess, maybe grittier. He's not the kind of guy that would show up in a penthouse. So Dirty, I think, even if I hadn't been asked to participate in that film, watching the film, I would like it. It's one of those films I'd like to have it in my collection. It's really well done. Yeah, really, it was a combination. It was an urban drama. There was social political commentary that he was trying to communicate, his perception of society, the police, and how all that, the corruption in the world, the human spirit. And certain aspects of the film have this horror element to it, where characters see people coming back to life. and they're rebuked by their conscience. And I thought, this movie's layered, man. And a lot of people gimmick off the Training Day. It's a copycat of Training Day, but I thought, no, it's its own entity, man. So Dirty was definitely something that I was proud to be a part of.
So I was gonna ask, sorry, I have bronchitis, guys. I was gonna ask, as tattoos are becoming more socially acceptable, do you think that the acting community will see you more as someone who is intelligent, who can play these intelligent roles, as opposed to tattooed guy?
As opposed to thug, yeah.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think yes, because I think you're very well spoken.
Thank you. I sure as hell hope so. At this point, I really don't know. All I can say, kind of like what I said before, I'm just grateful that people are expressing themselves in ways that I never imagined. I hope that somehow that those running the show in Hollywood, or people that have power to make things happen through financing, etc., will some recent experience I had with the film Anarchy Parlor, directed by Kenny Gage and Devin Downs. The gentleman who organized that, put that together, a tattoo, and we sat down many times and had philosophical discussions, talked about everything and anything, and it was refreshing, to speak to young men who were not intimidated, got it. Devin rides a motorcycle, rides a Harley. I was like, oh wow. So I said to them, I thank whatever kept me alive this long that I could finally live long enough to meet some directors like you, who are not like, oh, what are we going to do with the tattoos? How do we hide this? How do we hide this? This anathema, this curse. How do we bury it? What do we write to apologize to the public so that we don't get in trouble? And I think that thinking is still pervasive, unfortunately. I don't know if, I think they're exploiting the tattoo experience, unfortunately, not so much embracing it. Because I haven't seen any TV shows where they explore firemen who are saving lives and rescuing people from burning buildings. A lot of these guys are tattooed. They have their family, their wives, portrait, kids. In Los Angeles, in the summertime, they're told to wear long sleeves because they don't like the image that communicates to the public. So these are firemen. So where's the TV show that has the firemen that are tattooed that rescue people? I haven't seen that show. Maybe I missed it. But when we see shows like that, maybe there'll be a shift that's not just for the sake of sensationalism, but it's intelligent enough where people in the tattoo community can finally feel, you know what, we're liberated, really liberated. We're not being exploited, we're liberated now. There's something going on here that has some soul power, that's spirited, and that speaks to those who have not been allowed to communicate. I'm not the only one, man. There's so many people I come across that have a voice, that are intelligent, just happen to communicate themselves through ink. Why do we have to be the Frankenstein's monster? No disrespect to Frankenstein, I love the film. I'm just saying.
Actually, I wanted to circle back and actually talk to you a little bit before we wrapped up about your genre work, your work in horror. You're obviously a fan.
Yeah.
And starting kind of, I figured it was around the mid-90s or so when you really sort of started doing, you'd done the Carnival of Souls remake, you had worked on a couple of other things, you did Strangeland, Wishmaster 2. Could you talk about maybe some of the highlights for you of working some of the horror roles, like right up until today?
Yeah, quickly. Dee Schneider, Strangeland, respect. Captain Howdy, man. I mean, he did something no one could even conceive of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I ran into him like last year in Marina Del Rey. He's like, hey, Robert, I hear my name in public, I get nervous. Right? I turn around, there's Dee, and he's like, yeah, man, how you been? Great, we're talking. Yeah, I'm trying to get funding for part 2, so I think it's terrific. So a high point for me was working with Dee on Strangeland, and that he allowed me to communicate that wonderful monologue as a tow truck driver, and talking about how, giving the cops a brief history, like, hey guys, wake up, didn't you know, like, Winston Churchill's, whatever, had a tattoo or something. And so I thought it was terrific that he was courageous enough to touch on that subject matter. Wishmaster 2, there was comedy in that film. It was hilarious to play in a film like that. It was a successful franchise, and I forget the details of the scene I was in, but something, I just remember the bit being really funny, people responding to it, and I thought that was really cool, that I was in a situation of horror where, yeah, I'm playing a convict, but something happens in the scene that's actually very funny. People, man, I remember that scene where you tell the lawyer to go F himself, and then literally it starts to happen because the Wishmaster makes it happen. That was brilliant, so that was a lot of fun. And then to bring us up to speed with Anarchy Parlor, Kevin Gage, any of the guys I just mentioned, Devin Downs, we made this movie in Lithuania. I play a tattoo artist, akin to a Silence of the Lambs type stuff, really pretty brutal mythology, man. And we filmed it in the dungeons of Lithuania, and we had a great time. The characters, very charismatic, a bit twisted though, but effective.
And it's a full-blown leap for you, isn't it?
And that's the other thing. They said, Robert, we don't see this character actor, man. We want you to be the lead of the film. And I thought that was wonderful. And Apes and always used to joke with me, Robert, I'm waiting for the day when you show up in a film where you win the girl. I said, well, Tony, there's been some movies where I got the girl. Yeah, but you got her. You took her. I want you to win the girl, like win her, like woo her. And like, oh, yeah. And I think Parler is close to that.
Very cool. Now, you're busy as hell. I mean, I counted like at least a dozen things that you're involved in right now that are in post-production. And one title especially leaps to the fray, and probably would for all of you if you've read his IMDb page, which is Sky Sharks. Give us a scoop.
Oh, yeah, right, okay. Yeah,
It's just your typical flying shark zombie Nazi movie, right?
Sure, right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and ironically, we filmed it in Germany, so that's... it was, had a lot of fun with that. I worked with Lynn Lowry.
Oh, right on. She was here just a year or two ago.
Yeah.
I interviewed her then.
She's
terrific.
She's just, class act. And so that was fun. More comedy. Plane is going down, sharks are ripping apart the whole hull, and plays I guess she's a Catholic, she's a sister in the church. I'm dressed up as a priest. And she's praying. She's, oh, Father, I'm afraid to fly. And I'm talking to her about faith, which I think is hysterical. You have to have faith, sister, all the Nazis who tear over the pole. So that was a lot of fun. That was just fun. And I hope people don't take the film too seriously. It's just a farce. And I just hope it does well. So I'm just grateful that I'm being invited into situations where we can laugh. And the genre is horror, because I do have an affection for it. And a lot of people, I think, real quickly, people have come up to me in the last several years going, hey man, I miss you on General Hospital. I played this priest on General Hospital, this character named Manny Luis. And for years, this character's been haunting me, not of my own creation, but by people saying, man, I miss you on General Hospital, so it's nice to kind of wear the priest get up again in Sky Shark. So that was, I think maybe the producers or director might have read my autobiography where I talk about that. So that was
Awesome. And let's see how much time we have here. Real quickly, I did want to ask you, it looks like you're producing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw there's a project called the Pizza Joint that you
Yes.
are producing. So what's the story with that?
another comedy, which is great. Pizza Joint's about a bunch of young boys, men and women who they run a pizza joint, and they have a very interesting recipe in the way that they make the pizza. They sprinkle various strains of marijuana in the pizza. And
That's
they get
apropos in this state.
Yeah, I think it's right on time, man, given what's going on in the United States. So, and I play a character named Shorty, who's the muscle who works for some guy named Player, who loaned them the money to open up the pizza joint. And it's a lot of like Three Stooges type bits, Abbott Costello kind of stuff. It's just having fun with the gimmick of the bad guy and the kids. It's kind of reminded me of, you remember the film with Abbott Costello, Bela Lugosi, called
Costello
Meet Frankenstein? It's kind of like that. Like, to me, it has quality. They definitely were fans of that film. There's certain qualities about the film that remind me of that film.
Right on. Well, I think we're just about approaching the time where we need to clear out of here. So, does anybody else have any last questions that they'd like to ask? Robert?
Sure, real quick. Since you brought it up a few times, do you still have to audition? Or are you invited, like you said?
50-50, depending on the project. Yeah, I definitely, for Ryan Murphy's American Horror Story, I had to audition for that. And for some of the high-profile stuff, see, here's the thing I want to be careful with, because I don't feel that you have hit shows and all that stuff, and they've earned their position for a reason, because people are watching them. But then there's so many independent filmmakers, man, that do genius work that don't have the money to create the kind of visibility they deserve, And so I don't want to, I've been invited to situations with people like Robert, I've been a fan of him for years, but they allow me situations of employment where there's character development, where television might not let me do that. But when I play a serious show again, sure. But if I'm given a choice between mentality, the fabric of our conscience, whatever we're struggling with as human beings, and dealing with those feelings. And it's always not always a pretty evolution, you know. So, but yeah, to answer your question, yes, I do have to audition still. And luckily, though, every now and then, an independent filmmaker or somebody will say, Robert, you want to come to our party and work with us? We'd love to have you. But where do I sign up? I'm not too proud.
I'm sure I'm not alone in extolling the sentiment that we could easily go on for another hour. There's like, I haven't even touched like at 1/10 of your filmography, and it's just driving me nuts that we have to clear out of
Thank
here.
you.
But thank you so much for being here. Everyone, Robert is, you're here all weekend,
Yeah.
correct? You've got your table, so you can go out there and ask him some of the myriad questions that I think we all would like to have answered. We've all got our own.
If I could just take a moment, thank everybody for sitting down and being patient enough to sit through my banter. Thank you, for taking the time to sit in the room and embrace. Thank you, because without you guys, I don't exist.
Well, it's totally our pleasure, and thank you so much for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Lasardo.